VR multiplayer, one of the most popular type of VR game, which lets you be immersed in your game with your friends and play as they were in the same room as you. So in this video, I have the pleasure to tell you that I will show you how you can make your own VR multiplayer game from scratch using Unity. Are you guys ready? So let's get started. By the way, there will be a second part of this tutorial coming on this YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe to not miss this video. Also, you can support the channel on my Patreon and join 400 other people to have access to all the source code of my project and 10 exclusive tutorials, as well as an extra episode on VR multiplayer where I will show more advanced stuff. Okay, so first thing first, we need to set up a Unity project with VR. So here, what I'm going to do is to redo quickly the step that I've shown in my tutorial series on how to make a VR game in Unity. So if you haven't already, go watch this video first. So to make a VR project from scratch, what we need to do is to go here in the Unity hub. I will click here on the drop down next to new and select Unity 2019.4 version. So you can use another version of Unity for this project, but some of the parts for the VR setup will be a bit different. So if you want to follow exactly like I do here, make sure you use the same version, so 2019.4. So I will click here for the 3D template, and we can name this project VR multiplayer game. Really original, I know. So let's click on create. Okay, so now we have an empty Unity project in front of us. So the first thing we need to do is to import the Unity XR toolkit. So to do so, we need to go to Windows, Package Manager. We can wait for all the package to load. Now, if you look into this list of package in our Package Manager, you won't be able to see the XR Unity toolkit, and it's because it's a preview package. So you need to go here, click on Advanced and click on Show Preview Packages. And there you go. Now, if we go below, we can see XR Interaction Toolkit. I can click on it and click then on Install. Okay, so the XR Interaction Toolkit is in our project now. I can close the Package Manager and we can set up a VR for the SDK that we want. So to do so, we can go to Edit, Project Settings, and here in Player, you can see that we have a little box that we can check here, virtual reality supported. And there you go. If we click on it, you can see that we now have two elements in the virtual reality SDK, the Oculus for the Oculus devices and OpenVR for the OpenVR devices like the HTC Vive, the Valve Index, and so on. And these are for all desktop and PC headsets. If you want to enable for the Oculus Quest, you can go here next to this button and do the same here for virtual reality supported, and here click on the plus button to select the Oculus. Perfect. So now our project can support all of these platforms and has XR enabled, and we can now work on our VR game. And by the way, if you are using a version above 2019.4, like I said, the setup is a bit different. You will need to go to XR Plugin Management, click here on Install XR Plugin Management, and it will be a bit the same as I did here. You will need to click on Oculus to add, for example, this type of devices to your project. But now that I have in my setup virtual reality SDK these elements on both desktop and Android, we can close this windows. And the next step is to add a VR camera. So we can here click on the main camera and right click and delete it right there because we will add our own camera. I will then right click, go to XR and select Room Scale XR Rig. So as you guessed it, this will create a XR rig which works for room scale application. So as you can see, we have the XR rig script here. As a child, we have the camera offset that we can use well to offset the camera. And we have both the main camera, the left-hand controller, and the right-hand controller. So the left-hand controller and the right-hand controller both come with the XR Ray interactor, the line renderer, and XR interactor line visual that I won't be using for this project. So we can select both of these game objects with pressing the control button. I will then remove the XR Ray interactor. Then I will remove the line renderer. And if you do in that order, you can see that I have a little error coming here that said that we need first to delete the XR interactor line visual if we want to delete the line renderer. So I will do exactly this. So remove instead the XR interaction line visual and then the line renderer. And as you can see, we now have the XR brick camera with only a left-hand controller with a XR controller script that will make this game object follow exactly the left hand and this game object follow exactly the right hand. And there you go. Now, next step, I will create a little ground for our application. So we can right click in the hierarchy, go to 3D object, plane. I can recenter here the plane by clicking on 0, 0, 0 position. And I want to make this plane black. So I will here create a new material by right clicking in my project windows over there. Go to create materials. We can rename it black. I will here change the main color to, well, black and drag it over there. And as you can see, this element is not lit yet. It's because we have not baked the light on our scene, which we can do really quickly by going in the lighting tab here. If you are not able to see this tab, you can go to Windows, Rendering and Lighting Settings. And so here, what we need to do is just click here on Generate Lighting. And there you go, you can see that the plane is lit correctly. We can scale it up a little bit, like I always do. And so now at this point, we have a ground for application, but we also have a XR rig camera. And so this means that if I click on play, we should be able to have VR working on our project. And there you go. As you can see, if I move my head, the position of the camera change accordingly, and so we have VR enabled on our project. Awesome. Okay, so if you watch my tutorial series on how to make a VR game, you know that in the second part of this tutorial series, I show how to create end presence for both ends and how to animate the ends based on the button that the player is currently pressing. So I want to put that in my VR game, but to save you some time, I've made a Unity package that you can drop in your own VR project and have already the prefab made for you. And by the way, you will be able to download this Unity package in the description below. Now I can simply drag this Unity package in my project. So I can click on import to put everything in my project. And there you go. Now starting from here, it's really easy. We just need to go to the prefab folder, which contains the left hand presence and right hand presence prefab. And I can simply drag the left hand presence as a child of the left hand controller and the right hand presence as a child of the right hand controller. And there you go. Now, if I click on play, as you can see, I'm able to see my hands in VR, and if I press on some of the button, you can see that the hands animated correctly. It's perfect. But we have a little bug. As you can see, there is some clipping on the end when they get near my head. So this is really easily fixable by going simply here in the main camera of the XR rig and changing the near plane to, instead of 0.3, something like 0.01. Perfect. And here we go. Now, if we click on play, you can see that we have no more clipping issue and that our VR setup is completed. We can now start on the multiplayer aspect of our game. And by the way, if you guys are enjoying this tutorial so far, make sure to leave a like below. It really helps to promote this channel. Okay, so for the multiplayer setup, we obviously need some developer kit that will help us connect to a server and manage to send data over the network. And I've spent some time researching for the best solution to do so. It seems like Unity will come up with their own network solution this year, but in the meantime, we will use another great multiplayer SDK, which is also free, Photon. So to set up Photon, it's actually really easy. You will need to go to the asset store and search here for Photon. By the way, if you are not seeing the asset store, you can go here to Windows Asset Store. So now that we have the Photon searching, you can see that we have a bunch of assets. Some of them are not free, like this one or this one. And the one that we will be interested in is this one, Photon 2 over there. And if I click on it, I can then import it in my project by clicking here on the import button. We can press again on import. And here you go, the asset is in our project. And as you can see, we have the pun with our opening after we download this asset. where you could put the app ID if you already have a Pun account. And if you don't have a Pun account, you can put here your email address. Click here on Setup Project. And what this is gonna do is send you an email to set up the password to start your Photon account. Really easy, as you can see. Once you have set up the password for your account, you will be sent to the dashboard of Photon, where you can see the application using Photon. And if you want to go to the dashboard directly, you can go here and click on dashboard. So by default, we have two applications in our Photon applications, and we can create a new one by clicking here on create a new app. I will change the type here to Photon Pun. We can give a name like multiplayer VR game, and then click on create. And as you can see, this adds here this little Windows multiplayer VR game, where we will be able to look at how many players are currently connecting to our game. And there is also here the app ID, which we can click on and copy this ID to our game. Now, if we go back to our Unity project, and if it's the first time that you are using Photon, automatically it will use here the default app ID that is created at first for the ID of your game, but you can change it always by going here in the Photon server settings that you can access by going to Windows, Photon Unity networking, and then highlight server settings. And now you just have to make sure that the app ID that you are using is the same as the one in the Pun game here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it over there one more time to be sure. Perfect, now we will be able to create the code for our multiplayer VR game. Okay, now that we have Photon Pun installed and set up on our project, it's time to connect to the server. So to do so, I will create an empty game object by right-clicking in the hierarchy, go to create empty. We can rename this one Network Manager and add a new component of the same name, so Network Manager. Now let's double click on this script to open it. Okay, so for this script, we will need to add using photon.pun at the top, but also using photon.realtime to access all of these namespace. So the goal of this script is to connect automatically at the start of the game on the network. So what I'm going to do is create a new function that will replace here the update function that I will call connect to server. There you go. Oh, now at the start of the game, I want to call this function. So we can easily connect to the server using photon network.connect using settings. Perfect. I will also write to test our connection debug.log.try connect to server, so that this will appear in the console windows. So to know if we are connected to the server, I want to have a function that is being called when we are connected. And to do so, it's actually really easy using the mono behavior pun callback. So by extending here the mono behavior pun callback, we'll be able to override some of the initial functions that are being called when we are connected to the server, when somebody join the server, when we join a room, and so on. So for example, we can write override here and search for on connected to master. And so when we are connected to the master, this function will be called. So we can even test this by saying debug.log connected to server. And there you go. Now, finally, once we are connected to the server, it doesn't mean that we can share data with another player. To share data with another player, we need to be in the same room. So to connect to a room, we can do photon network.join or create room. And as you can see, this function takes a bunch of variables like the name of the room, some room options, and the type lobby. So for the room name, we can write something like room 1. For the room option, we will need to create them. So I will do room options equals new room options to create a new room options. And we can, I don't know, set the maximum player to be like 10. We can set the visibility to true, so that all player will be able to see this room, and we can set this room to be open. So is open equals true, so that we will be able to join this room even after it is created. Okay, now we can add the room option as a second variable of the join or create room function. Then we need a third variable, which is the type lobby. So here we can simply do type lobby.default. And there you go. Now we have all the parameters to join or create the room. And so as for the connection of the server, we can override a certain function to know if we join the room or not. So for example, if I type override, we have on join room over there, and I can debug.log joined a room. Perfect. And there you go. Now basically that's it. We here in the first start of the game, we connect to the server, and once we are connected, we create or join a room which name is room1, and we have here the function that is called when we have joined the room. We can also override a function that we will use to know if another player joined the room. So it will be override on player enter room. And as you can see, we can use here the new player variable here to have some data over the player. But in my case, I will simply write on top here a new player joined the room. And there you go. Now our script is completed. We can save it and go back to Unity. Okay, now let's try our game to see if we can connect to the server. If I click on play, you can see that some stuff are happening here on the console windows. At first, we try to connect to the server, and some seconds later, we are connected, and then we joined a room. Awesome. But now let's see if this works for other players too. So this is a bit weird, but to test a multiplayer game, we can run two applications at the same time on our computer. So to do so, I will build our game. So we can go for this in File, Build Settings, add Open Scene here to add this scene that we have open on the build. And we can finally click on Build to build our game. Okay, here you go. Our game is now built here, as you can see. And for example, we can first run it in the Unity editor. So here I will click on play. As you can see, it already is connected to our server, and it has also created a new room. And now if I launch the second application, you can see that on the other side, we have triggered the function. We know that a new player joined the room. And so this means that the two players are connected to the server, and that we are able, for example, to show the hands and the head of the other player. So now the idea is to add an avatar that will show the hands and the head of the player when he's connected to the server, and to show this for all of the players. So here in the network manager, what I'm going to do is add a new script, which I will call network player spawner. We can double click on this script to open it. As before, we'll add on top using photon.pun. And I also want here to extend the mono behavior pun callback function. And now instead here of this start and the update function, I want to override the onJoined room function. And I also want to override another function, the onLeft room. And there you go. So obviously this function is called when we are joining the room, and this function is called when we left the room. So for example, if we are leaving the application. And so what we want to do in this case is spawn a player, and on the left room, we want to disable the player, so to remove it. So for this, we'll create a private game object variable, which I will call spawned player prefab. And now on join room, what we want to do is, after calling the base function, we want to do photon network.instantiate. And there we want to specify a name. So I will call this one network player. We want to say a certain position. So we could do any vector3 variable that we want, but in my case, I will spawn where this game object is. So transform.position and transform.rotation. So this will instantiate the network player prefab for all the client of the server. And we can reference this variable with the spawn player prefab. And here we go. Now what's left for us to do is on the left room, we want to destroy the spawn player that we made. So Photon network.destroy and then destroy the spawn player prefab. And as you guessed it, this will destroy the spawn player prefab for all of the client of the server. And there you go, we can save our script and go back to Unity. Okay, so we now have a script that will spawn a certain prefab when we join a room, and that will destroy this same prefab when we leave a room. And so what's left for us to do is create this prefab. So for example, I can create an empty game object and call it network player. So here, make sure that the name match the name that we put in the script. So in our case, it was network player, and this is why I'm putting exactly the same thing here. So make sure it is the case. Now what we can do is, for example, right click and add, I don't know, a sphere just to test it. Okay, so now that we make the network player game object, we can drag it here in the project windows to make it a prefab. And as you can see, it saved it here in the project windows. And now to let this new game object be instantiated by this script, so by calling photon network.instantiate, we need to put it in the resource folder. So for this, we can create a new folder and rename it resources like this. Make sure to make no typo mistake. And then I will drag the network player over there. And now this is the folder that is used by Photon to instantiate the game object with the name that we specified here. So now that we have this saved over there, we can remove the network player from our scene. And now we can test our game to see if it spawns correctly a network player prefab. And as you can see, we have an error. Photon network.instantiate can only instantiate object with a Photon view component. And so to make this happen, we simply need to add here on our network player the Photon view component. And what this component does is collect the data that we want to synchronize over the network. And so now we can try to build and run again. Okay, so we have the game running on one application. Now we can try it on the other one. And as you can see, now that we are connected to the server, we have two network players spawned. We have one for here the first player and for the second player on the second application. And if I go on the second application and that I remove it, this will leave the game and will also destroy the second network player prefab. Perfect. Okay, now that we can create a player for the client of the server, what we want to do is not have just a sphere in there, but show the hands and the head of the other players to make it feel like they are part of our game. So to do so, we will fix the network player. So here I'm going to double click on it in the resource folder. And instead here of the sphere, we can remove it. And I want to add 3 empty game objects. The first one would be the head, which will follow the head of the player. The second one will be the left hand. And the third one will be the right hand. And here you go. Now for the left hand and the right hand, we can go in models, Oculus hands, and go to prefab and drag here the custom left hand model as a child of the left hand and the custom right hand model as a child of the right hand. Now for the head, I can simply create a sphere and maybe scale it down to an appropriate size, and we can maybe change its material to, I don't know, the same that the ends are using, so the ends solid materials. And there you go. Now what we need to do is make it so that the head, the left hand and the right hand are following well the headset of the player, the left controller and the right controller. So to do so, what we can do is create a new script on the network player that I will call network player. Okay, let's double click on this script to open it. Now for the script, we'll need 3 variables of type transform. So one for the head, one for the left hand, and one for the right hand. And now in the update function, we want to synchronize the position of the head transform with the headset, and the left hand with the left controller, and the right hand with the right controller. So to do so, I will create a function which I will call map position, and that will take as the first variable a transform of that I will call target. And for the second variable, we need an XR node, which we can access by using Unity engine.xr. And now we can put in here as the second variable XR node, and I will call this one node. So to get the node position, we can do input devices dot get device at XR node, give the node that we have, and use try get features values to get the position with common usage dot device position, and then do as the output out vector3 position. And we can do the same, but this time for the rotation. So I'm going to copy and paste this line, and instead use device rotation here, and output not a vector3 but a quaternion that I will call rotation. And now that we have the position but also the rotation of this XR node, we can do target.position equals position and target.rotation equals rotation. And there you go. By doing so, the target transform will take the position and the rotation of the XR node. And so in the update function, we can call the map function with the head and the head, and we can do the map position also, but for the left hand with the left XR node, and do the same this time for the right hand and for XR node dot right hand. Now we can save our script and go back to Unity. Okay, so before going to the scene, we need to set the head, the left hand and the right hand variables. So I will drag here the head to the head slot of our network player, the left hand on the left hand slot of the network player, and do the same for the right hand. And there you go. Now our network player is set up. We can go back there and click on play. Okay, awesome. Now, as you can see, we have 2 sets of hands showing. One is from the end present script that we made at the start of this video, and that we can animate by pressing on our button. And the other hands are spawned from the network player and appears to the other player connected to the server. So at this point, we have 2 issues. First, the hands that we are moving are not synchronized over the network, which means that even if they move, because they follow our hand, they won't move in the game of the other player. And obviously, the second issue is that we have 2 sets of hands. So we need to somehow hide our own network player avatar, but not hide it to the other players. So to fix the first issues, we need to go back to our network player prefab, and to synchronize the position and rotation of the head and the hands over the network, we need to add a Photon View transform component to all of these transform parameters. So let me select these 3 elements and add this Photon View transform component. By the way, as you can see, you can also synchronize the scale, but I think we can leave this one like this as we are not updating the scale of this game object. And there you go. Now, if we go back to the network player parent, you can see that all of the Photon View transform component that we added now appears in the Photon View component, which means that these data will be sent over the network. Awesome. Now, for the second issues, we can go back to the network player script. Now, to only hide the network hands that we control, I will need to add using photon.pun at the top over here. We can add a new private variable of type Photon View that I will call Photon View. And we can access this parameter at the start of the game with a get component of type Photon View in the start function. And here you go. Okay, now that we have the Photon View variable, we can use it to know if the prefab was spawned by us or by another player. So if photon view dot is mine, then this prefab is mine, and we can hide everything with right-hand.gameObject.setActiveFalse. Let me copy and paste this line and use now left-hand.gameObject.setActiveFalse. And finally, head.gameObject.setActiveFalse. Perfect. And so while we are at it, we also made a big mistake while making this script. You see here we are moving this game object even if we are not controlling the network avatar. So we need to put the 3 call of the mapping function if the photon view is us. So if the photon view is mine as well. And there you go, now everything is done. We can save our script and go back to Unity. And there you go guys, let's finally build once for all our game to test it. Okay, so here I got the game running on a separate application, and if I launch it on the Unity editor, you can see that it is working. We have 2 hands following us. So there is a big difference from the 2 hands that we had before. One hand is the hand presents game object that we have like before, but the other hand is showing from the other application. So to better show you the final result, I've tested the final game with Ninja Fella from my Discord server. And this is the final result. And here you go guys, congratulations, you managed to get through one of my longest tutorial ever, and I hope you enjoyed every bit of it. And if you did, please make sure to leave a like below. We have some further adjustment to make, so for example we can add voice chat to the network system and make the hands animation works over the network as well, so I think this will be cool. So make sure to subscribe to not miss the next part of this video, which will be coming very soon. And you know how it goes, you can support my work on Patreon, where I will put the source code of all of my projects and where I will post a more advanced episode about multiplayer setup in VR. On that matter, a big shout out to the last Patreon who joined lately. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.